right, welcome to the Bryce Eddy Show. So, hey, today my guest is the president of the Border Security Alliance, Jobe Dickinson. How are you, sir?
Great. Good morning, Bryce. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, no, I'm glad to do this because, obviously this was such a massive topic and it remains to be a massive topic. But, things have changed pretty dramatically since the Trump administration came into power. I mean, kind of overnight. The problem isn't done by any means, and we've got a lot of sort of meat on the bone that we've got to figure out. But I'm curious, and I know the audience is, as to all right, what happened, where we were at, and then where we're at now, because a lot of people voted for this. So let's first, give me your bio background, and then bring us up to speed.
Sure. So I give a little history on myself. I moved to Tucson, Arizona, which is about 45 minutes north of the border, when I was 4 years old. Spent my whole life out there. When I was 21, got hired as a Tucson police officer, and worked as a local police officer for a good almost 20 years down there. Did everything from patrol to undercover surveillance, auto theft detective, supervisor, special events coordinator. Worked midnights most of my career, so kind of saw the underbelly. And during this time, I worked over 5 different administrations, basically, of presidential administrations, and there have always been border issues. Not
Right.
one has solved the problem one way or the other. Each one a little different, but definitely the Biden administration with the open border policy just destroyed local communities, in my opinion.
And so I have a question along that lines because, okay, if you've had sort of this broad view of what each administration was like, can you give kind of what was the personality during each time?
Yeah, I mean it's a little different, and the world has changed, right? I'll tell you,
For sure.
when I was in high school, I ran cross country. Doesn't look like it now, but I remember we had a meet in Douglas, Arizona, and I was running along the border, and I didn't realize it. And the border was a 3-strand barbed wire fence, and
Right.
that's what it was. That was one of our races, and so it's just compared to that to now having and there's different parts of the wall, right? There's the George Bush wall, and then there's the Obama wall, and then there's the Trump wall, and each one looks a little different. Each one had to Obama had to go higher than Bush, and it had razor wire on the top of it, and then Trump's wall is you know 10 feet higher than that one. But I will give Trump some credit in the sense of he talked to the agents on the ground and said what's going to work the best,
Right.
what goes through that. So when I say there's issues with each one, it just depends on the political climate, but also where we were in that stage of the world. When I started in early 2000s, it was smuggling marijuana. That was the biggest, marijuana and cocaine coming up by the cartels.
Yeah,
And
so it's
then
like it's black market trade, it's economic pressures. I mean, all those things are going to affect, the kind of flow that we have on our southern border and northern border. I mean, all of that's going to make a big difference. So I get that. And each one, you said, kind of had a solution or had some different solutions. What stood out to you between the administrations?
Well, so here's an example I use of there's a supply and demand, right, and the demand problem. So let's go back to like 2004. Um, there was a methamphetamine problem, right, and we had a lot of meth labs in America popping up. And if you remember this, Breaking Bad kind of TV show,
Yep.
you had the motels, you had the RVs, and people were going in buying Sudafed at the local pharmacies, Walgreens, CVS's, whatever it was. And just so, what did we do as a country? We said that's a problem. Here's the chemicals they're getting. Let's make it more difficult to get Sudafed, right? And I know this isn't border related, but it is. So now when you go into your local Walgreens, you have to show your ID, right? And you can only buy so much Sudafed every week. And that's an Arizona law, but I'm pretty sure it's kind of constant in most states.
Right.
The reason that happened, so there was still that demand problem from Americans that wanted methamphetamine. But who picked up on that? The cartels picked up on that, and they said, "Hey, we've got a way to fix this. we'll import our precursors from China. We'll come over and we'll have our super labs down in Mexico. And so that's then what started. And I remember at the police department, we had a whole meth lab decontamination team. They had to go through training. It was hazmat. We got our fire involved. It was this big task force that we had. And overnight, it was just done. There was no more meth labs because the cartels started doing these super labs and then smuggling the meth over the border. And you know, the cartels are a business, and the cartels do what they can to make money.
Multi-billion-dollar international businesses at this point. And I don't think people realize how far their reach is, but it goes internationally. It goes all throughout the United States. It's not just a border issue.
No, 100%. It's all over the world, and it is just, and they're great business people, but the one thing they don't care about is human life. So they will do whatever it is. There's no regard for human life. And so that's where, and we can get into this with the human smuggling versus the drug smuggling and how it's all connected and how it's all intertwined to go through that. So that's when the meth started coming over. And from like '04 to 2010, that was a huge problem for border type stuff. And so what I saw as a local officer is stash houses, you know, in just nice community neighborhoods. You'd have a rental house, and all of a sudden we'd find out about it. We'd do some surveillance on it, and then boom, it's, you know, you'd hit it, and there'd be 20 illegals, you know, that they brought in with the people smuggling, but then also just pounds and pounds of dope and it used to be marijuana. Marijuana's not even a thing anymore.
Right.
You know, the cocaine, the meth, that type of thing. So again, fast forward, I'd say.
Well, it's interesting. Meth is not marijuana is not a thing on the border anymore because it's grown here, and there's all kinds of illegal grow ops all over the back country of the Pacific Northwest.
Oh yeah,
cartel run most of them too, which is interesting. There's places where you do not want to hike accidentally.
Exactly, and that goes, you know, the making it legal in certain states and how we've treated marijuana. That doesn't mean that we've just got rid of the black market at all.
No, it's in California. It's grown almost more than anything else because California, you know, doing business in California of any kind is stupid. You have to go through 4 different agencies in order to do a legal operation in California, which drove a lot of black market activity again.
Mm-hmm. Yep, that's the same way out here. We still have medical marijuana in Arizona and recreational marijuana, and the medical marijuana is cheaper on taxes, so you still have people getting their medical card, you know,
which is still so stupid. You know, I got a little hinky shoulder, you know, give me some pot. Okay, here you go. Yeah.
Right. So fast forward, you know, and again, that was the cartel, and my time in auto theft, like 07, 08 through 2010 is really what opened my eyes to the border issue. Because the cartels, the F-250s, the F-350s, you know, Dodge, Chevy, Ford. I could give you a car commercial here if you want, which one does better when you chase it through the desert and it just drives on through concrete water canals and all sorts of stuff. But these cartels would come up to Phoenix, come up to Tucson. You'd take your family to a movie. You'd park your car out, and they would go steal that Ford F-250 with a screwdriver and be down south of the border, headed southbound, before you even came out of the movie. It's already across the border. But they weren't stealing cars to have the cars down in Mexico. Then they would load them up with whatever products they're bringing north. So it would be the meth, sometimes people, and send them back northbound and get to their different locations, their different stash houses. And it's a system they have, right? You do one leg of the journey at a time. And then they'd load those trucks up with what they wanted to take southbound: guns, money, and go back. And it was like a scheduled railway, basically. I mean, they had this down pat. So that's really what opened my eyes to the border issue. And I was just looking at it from an auto theft perspective, but not necessarily a holistic perspective. And that's what the Border Security Alliance tries to do, is build a public private partnership to make sure that the right information is getting to the right people. How this works, because I was just, like I said, I was just looking for, oh, I got a stolen car, that's great. Well, there was the gang unit, that I didn't work with, that was probably working, a cartel type gang, and had we had better lines of communication open, we probably had a lot of the same cases working together, because that's what the cartel does. They blend all their criminal syndicate together. It's not just they're just focusing on drugs, or they're just focusing on human smuggling, or they're just focusing on auto theft. So that's where our organization, again, and I can give you a little more history on myself of how I got involved in kind of the political realm in Arizona, but trying to pass along boots on the ground information up to our politicians who are making policy to make sure what we're doing is, the right laws and the right answers that help actually make our community safer.
Yeah, I love that. And I think, the border issues are always going to exist. Every sovereign country is going to have pressure from its neighbors if it's successful, or if there's something that people in the neighboring countries want, right? So if it's economic opportunity, if it's the drug trade, if it's auto theft, it doesn't matter. We're always going to have those issues. And each administration has, tried to tackle that. Or like in this recent administration, they willfully, in my opinion, and I want to get your thoughts on this, created an open border scenario in order to destabilize us and shift the political landscape in their favor. I've always talked about if they can break it, they can recreate it in their own image, which felt a lot of what this administration and what I believe to be, global influence wanted. What's your general take on maybe the motivation of this last administration? What's your perspective, and what's the perspective of the Border Security Alliance?
That's a great question. And, I have personal opinions, and I've had a lot of people, I've heard a lot of theories as to why they did this, why they wanted the open borders and bring them in. And living in Arizona, we had a lot of election conspiracy issues, were elections stolen, whatnot. And I don't want to get into all of that, but my opinion is, and this is the best theory that I think I've heard, we have a census in this country that we do every 10 years. And that census counts everybody in the neighborhoods. It doesn't talk about registered voters. It doesn't talk about citizens. It comes through and does that. And so if you look at, 15 million people, give or take, came across the border during that time, that's a 5% increase of people. And the cartels are taking these people and moving them to the places that they have control in. And a lot of those are sanctuary cities. A lot of those are currently Democratic run cities. And so that 5% change in population, I feel, can have a very big swing when you talk about representation in Congress. So I don't necessarily know that it's they're bringing them in and they're going to be able to vote and that type of thing. That there's possibility,
Yeah, look, there's enough evidence that we can show that there were some illegal aliens voting and things like that. But I think you're right that although that issue exists, was that enough to create the kind of problems or the kind of things that the conspiracy theorists had? Maybe not. But we do know, California being the perfect example, the way the census is done is, every people is counted, right? And so, if every person is counted, then, if you import an extra 100,000 people, what that affects as far as congressional seats, many are in areas in where you want additional congressional seats. You can heavily influence federal elections, federal law, not just state elections and state law.
Yeah, it really does affect your local community, but also globally, right? Or federally, at least.
Yep.
And I think there was a stat somewhere in the LA basin. It was like 73% of the workforce is illegal immigrants. That's basically where they've come up to. It's a huge amount. And that's another thing, I get a lot of people say, oh, well, I'm just a white guy and I want a secure border, so I must be racist. Or, you're just trying to scare people that all these people coming over are criminals. 100% not.
Correct.
The majority of the people coming over, of those 15 million, want a better life, want to come here and work.
Yeah. I begrudge none of them for that. The fault lies in our policymakers and the policies themselves, because I do believe, I've got many clients that have big farm operations or hospitality operations and have relied upon hardworking folks that have come here, both legally and illegally, but come up from, the South. And I believe that there can be a smart path for, whether it's, work programs or different things like that. I think that there is room to have that debate, because I want hardworking people here. I want to insist upon, folks following the law, and I'd like to create paths for those folks. But to assume that they're all criminals or to paint that picture, that's just not accurate, and it's not helpful for the real debate, in my opinion.
Right. And I agree with you. And, the other thing that I think people need to realize is, because you hear a lot about the American dream, and all, my grandparents came over as immigrants. We're a country of immigrants. We really are. And so we need to have that opportunity there for people.
Agreed.
But what these people are coming over from the southern border and the northern border, controlled by the cartels, you don't come across this border unless you were paying the cartel. And they then are basically, they're not letting them live the American dream. They're bringing them into basically indentured servitude.
Yeah, no, it's modern day slavery.
Yeah.
And these people are abused. I saw, the rape trees and, other things directly with my own eyes. I saw, we interviewed people that had been abused in the process. Terrible wickedness, and the cartels are a parallel government, and they operate kind of with impunity on the other side of the border here. We saw forward operating bases, we saw military level weaponry and equipment, sometimes even better than that, on our side of the border in the hands of cartel members. We witnessed these things with our own eyes. The cartels and their trade needs to be eliminated, but the people that want to come here, we have to figure out a good path for.
And that's what I go on to tell people. If we started calling these people slaves, which they basically are, indentured servitude, I feel, is a word that gets talked about a little bit easier, right?
Yeah.
But they're not able to get out of the control of these cartels for their entire lives, and that's not the American dream. And I would argue that. So, one of the things we talk about is, first off, you need a secure border, and that doesn't mean we need a wall on every single foot of our border. Couldn't hurt. But the wall helps supplement our border patrol, right?
Correct.
It funnels people to certain ways. It's a tool, just like we have cameras, just like we have lights. It's an all around, holistic approach. But we need a secure border.
It's a barrier, not impossible to get around, but it creates, it slows the flow, it directs the flow, it can concentrate it. It's very important. Just like our locked doors for intent criminals in our homes, or our gates, or all that stuff. Gated communities with great alarm systems and locked doors get robbed all the time.
Right.
But you want to reduce that. Just, don't leave the doors open and valuables lying around.
And so if we have a secure border, because that's what you need, because if you don't have a secure border, then people don't need to follow our immigration process, right? They just walk in. If there was no barrier, we wouldn't be a country. But then what we need to do, which has been 40 years not being touched, is fix the immigration system. I have a family member, it took her 9 years to get her citizenship, coming from an allied country, basically. Came over in college and wanting to live here and work and have a life. In 9 years, I just don't know what the background check could take that long. So we need to overhaul our immigration
Agreed.
system. And when you do that, then you free up, I steal this quote from the Yuma County sheriff, but we need a really big wall with wide open gates, meaning
Yeah.
you want people to come through the ports. We want to be able to inspect our products to get rid of the illicit black market, the illicit products that come in. I could go on for hours about the stuff that comes in while our Border Patrol agents are being, babysitters or, corralling people during the last administration. So you have these gates and you let people in, but the immigration, that's something that neither party has worked to fix over 40 years. And that's what we think is the not the final solution, but the next solution to this issue. Because as you've seen, our parties have kind of grown apart, right? We don't work too well together. And so if we're going to change this every 4 years or every 8 years, and you're seeing kind of the ramifications of, okay, 4 years ago it was 15 million people coming in, and now we're trying, the other party is trying to correct that, and you're seeing kind of the riots and the ICE agents going in and trying to get the criminal aliens out, and they're taking also regular criminal, illegal immigrants out when they come across them, and we're having kind of this backlash in the country right now. We need permanent solution, not executive orders and every 4 years what we do,
Agreed.
or else we're just going to continue to divide.
Agreed. Yeah. I mean, we need to, it has to be it's a complex issue, right? And both sides will try to create talking points that fit on bumper stickers for very complex issues. And many things need to be done kind of at once. You need to eliminate the magnet that draws people here illegally, right? And the mechanisms for that, right? So the cartel might be a mechanism, right? The cartel might be an entity that human trafficking, drug trafficking, things like that. So you need to reduce that, eliminate that, defeat the cartels, declare war on them, eliminate the benefits for illegal aliens here, or really clean that system up. Then there'll be less of a draw for people that just want to come here and take advantage of those things in our system. You'll right then and there, get a class of folks that want to come over here to work hard, to be an American, have an expectation that people share our American values and want to come and assimilate and bring the best of their culture with them, which is certainly what we want. We're a multicultural company. We want to do that. So make sure that you're going through all of those efforts, secure the border physically. And oh, by the way, and you can share your observations on this. They act as if the wall that Trump put up was just a physical barrier, but it also included sensors, lights, cameras, where it was complete. I mean, it was a pretty robust thing, not just something that people can scale super easily. And I know you saw the best of it, I'm sure, but it was pretty daunting and pretty effective.
And it was pretty embarrassing, in my opinion, when Biden took over and day one wrote an executive order that said all work shall stop. Because they
just allowed the materials to rot there, just laying in the sun. I mean, I got to see the big piles of, millions of dollars worth of fence materials or wall materials just laying there.
So there was the fence material laying there. I saw that both in Yuma and Cochise County, which are two separate areas, but had two different dynamic entries from the cartels. But the other thing were, he put up the lights and the camera and the sensors. They were basically wired, ready to go. It was almost like they just needed the on switch flipped, right? Yep. And they wouldn't flip the switch on. And that was a tool for Border Patrol to use to make them safer. The other part was, so in Cochise County, there's this big kind of mountain that goes up, and the road goes right on the border, and there's some switchbacks back and forth. And you have to maintain that road. Well, the federal government, they didn't maintain the road, putting down new AB, putting down, having the tractors grade it here and there, and it washed out. So now when agents were having to go up there, which they also go up there for medical rescues of migrants coming across, they couldn't get up the road anymore. So they had to drive an hour around to get to the other side of the mountain to go up. And that's just common sense says that's not a good solution, right? I mean, give our agents, give our law enforcement the ability to help people. I mean, that's
Well,
why I signed up to be a cop originally, to help
yeah,
people.
yeah, and you know this, man. You saw it. The morale for those guys was in the toilet because they I mean, there was that O'Keefe video that made its way around where the guy just basically said, "Yeah, we're just transport these days." I mean, it was those guys were so depressed. We in the border battle documentary we participated in, we interviewed some of them anonymously, but most of them would talk to us, but certainly wouldn't go on camera. But they were despondent. I mean, they signed up to keep people safe, keep our border secure, protect America. I mean, most of these guys, that was where their heart was at, and they were forbidden from actually effectively doing their jobs.
Yeah, and I'm a big union guy. I know Arizona's a right to work state, but for police unions and legal coverage, and I'm really close. I was close with the Border Patrol union at the time, and their suicide rate went just astronomically off the chart.
Yeah,
And
it's
I've
horrible.
I've I've seen that from a local law enforcement. It's something that's near and dear to my heart, and I've worked on some legislation to help out. But you're right. You sign up to do a job, and when you're not allowed to do that job, and morale goes down, and things just start spiraling, you wonder, what am I doing? What am I doing, and why am I not making a difference anymore? And that can have a really negative effect on everybody.
Well, yeah,
So,
and recruiting. I mean,
mhm,
you're not going to find guys to work those jobs that are of any caliber whatsoever if they know that they're not going to get to do their jobs.
correct. So, I do see now it has changed as the Trump administration has come in. The morale is back. They're doing their jobs, but there's a lot of work to do. One and two, what is that permanent solution that we can try to kind of fix this? And I still have not seen that. The big beautiful bill that was passed, and there's positives and negatives according to different people. There's funding for Border Patrol. There's funding for ICE, but we still need to work on that immigration piece, and
Yeah.
that's kind of where I'm focusing, at least for the next part of this administration, because I do believe that is kind of the finality of what we need for a solution right now.
Okay, so we put you in charge of that. You now have a full carte blanche, a magic wand, whatever you want to call it, to fix it. What would you do? I know you've thought a lot about this.
So it's kind of a multi-step process, right? You see what you give people certain steps that they want to come over. So one of them is, you hear a lot, oh, military age males coming across the border. Well, I'll be honest, I got hired as a police officer when I was 21, and I gave some of the best years of my body to the city of Tucson. I've got some broken parts. My shoulder doesn't work. My knees don't work. But that person, a lot of people want to come over and just work for 5, 8, 9 years. They don't want to move to America. They don't want to
Yeah.
bring their families over. They want the opportunity to make some money during those times, send the money back to their family, and then leave. So let's have a work.
Which is so understandable at a human level.
Mhm.
Absolutely. Yeah, and
So
I agree.
so let's have a work visa that someone can apply for. Let's go through the proper background checks, which background checks means we do need the other countries to cooperate with us, right? So there's some ways that you can make that happen economically. Make sure the person coming over has a pretty clean background, and then when they come over on those temporary visas, those work visas, that it's almost like a probationary step, right? So if they stop working or if they start getting in trouble, that's a way to get your visa suspended or revoked, and we don't want that person here. But again, I think the majority of those 50 million people coming over do want to work. Okay, so that's the work part, right? That's a 3, 5, 8 year plan. There's also people who want to come over to be citizens. Okay, let's have a process for that doesn't take 9, 10, 11, 15 years.
Agreed.
Let's have a process. Again, the backgrounds, cooperating with the other countries to see who they are. And then to get permanent citizenship, I think there's a little bit more that goes into that. A little bit more, testing, value our history, our culture, to go through that along with the other process. But let's make that an obtainable goal quickly for people. And
Agreed.
I think if you give people obtainable goals, they're willing to, put in the work for it. And you'll find out there might be people who aren't willing to put in the work for it, and that might not be the person that we want in this country.
Yeah, and we fundamentally forgot that immigration is for the country, not for the immigrant, principally. It's to make us stronger. It's to, grow and fuel our economic engine. It's so many things that are incredibly important for us that we forgot. And Teddy Kennedy, and I talked about this on the show, was one of those people that fundamentally changed that attitude here in America. And then it became, just about, hey, we take everybody. And that should not be the case. And there's nothing wrong with being a sovereign nation and having some demands of people that want to be guests in our country or want to permanently live here.
Mm-hmm. So I know it. I mean, I didn't give you like a really easy or in-depth solution, but I think it is pretty easy
complex.
to do.
Yeah,
it's a complex problem, but it's not difficult to find that solution.
I agree. It's one of those things. The solution is easy, but it's hard to do. And why it's hard to do is because you have very competing values. You have a very divided country. You have people that are using this issue in order to fundamentally transform and remake our country into something else, like a communist, oligarchy. And that's what we're really fighting against. We're fighting for the shared values of the United States and our kind of fundamental values that our founding fathers gave us. We're fighting to bring that back, and we're fighting against the folks that are against it there. And that's what makes it hard.
Yeah. Agreed 100%. And so that's, I think what it's going to take is just a little political gumption, right? We're going to need some good politicians that are willing to maybe sacrifice some of their political career to find a solution that both sides can work together. And when I say sacrifice their political career, I mean in the current status that we're in.
Yeah.
But I truly believe if there were a few people that worked across the aisle and did this, when you sit down, and I know I talk a lot on different shows, different podcasts, but when you sit down with your neighbors, I mean, my street, I can tell you, I've got a guy next door to me from Texas, staunch Republican, and the neighbor next door to him watches their baby, and they're as blue as you could be. And we all get along, we have barbecues, we eat together, we hang out. It's very easy. So I think if the political parties, instead of this push, yell, scream, came together, you would actually probably benefit from that as a politician, in my opinion.
1,000%. And I'm encouraged. I talked to a professor the other day who is noticing the same thing I am. There has been a vibe shift. And I think people are going to start coming closer together in the reasonable mainstream versus the kind of outliers of the woke left and the woke right. And we definitely have to emphasize that because there should be a way that we can reach across the aisle, have a real conversation, recognize that yes, we are a country of immigrants. We are a melting pot, and it's very important that we do that the right way. It's very important that we exalt the citizens over those that are coming here illegally, and we create a path for people who want to be citizens or just want to work here and contribute to our economy and take some money back home to their country. That's fine. We want that kind of a positive flow, but we want to be a sovereign country again. Agreed
100%. So there's so much more, again, the border issues that affect the illicit trade. When you tie up Border Patrol agents over here, I use, in Yuma, the immigrants were just lining up. The cartels I drove there at 5 a.m, and there were 600 immigrants just standing by the wall waiting for Border Patrol to come pick them up.
I've been on that wall. I've watched that. I've been there right at that point where the reservation meets, and they just stroll right across.
But at the same time, the next week I took the Maricopa County attorney down to the Cochise border, and down there, the local sheriff's department had their cameras up and running, and there's still people sneaking across in camouflage with backpacks and carpet shoes.
Yep.
So why, if they can just come in and just get processed and released, why are the cartels still sneaking people across? And the answer is those are the bad actors over there, and those
Yep.
are the bad products. But they've tied up Border Patrol agents in a whole different county, processing 5,000 people a day, while there's still people sneaking across. So again, and what's coming across in those backpacks, the fentanyl right now.
Yep.
That's the problem, right? And we didn't get into when we had an opioid problem in this country, a demand problem, right? And the supply was from pharmacies. And so we decided we needed to fix that as a country, and we cut down our prescriptions by 70%. The cartels took advantage of that, and that's where the fentanyl comes in. The problem is cartels don't have good control when they're making a fentanyl pill. Their quality control isn't as good as an American pharmacy, and so one pill might have 1 nanogram of what it needs, and the other one might have 100, and that's the pill that kills first time they use, right?
Yep.
And so now we're looking at this, and I mean, Tucson, Phoenix, Arizona, all across the country, the fentanyl fold. I mean, it's gross to what we've done to our citizens, that we're losing 100,000 citizens a year to overdose, and that's from the cartels and from that problem. And so we need to fix, and we will fix it. We have fixed we have fixed it, and then there'll be the next problem, and we need to get on that. But right now, fentanyl is just destroying our society, our communities, and it gets into the children. That's who I really want to protect. I've got 2 teenagers, and it's scary to me, what's out there. And it just, you pray to God, I do the best I can, but that's what the government is for the security of our people. And so that's what we need to work on when we talk about immigration and border security. It's because we want to keep out the nefarious and illicit products.
That's exactly right. Well, how do we follow you? How do we support your efforts? What would you like to see the audience do? Tell us.
For sure. You can go, we have a website. It's www.bsa-us.org for Border Security Alliance. We kind of just put up some information there, some stats. We are a nonprofit, so we'll take donations if anyone's willing to help support us. Go through there, and then you can follow me or other people, the Border Security Alliance, on Twitter, on X, by searching us there. So we really just try to get to our politicians. We're expanding. One thing, Arizona was a border state. Now what I like to say is every state's a border state.
That's
every
true.
state in this country is having.
We're all affected.
Yeah. So we've been working on expanding into other states. We've got Washington on board, Texas on board. I think we're going to get Maine, Minnesota. So we're doing northern and southern border, because we are seeing more stuff start at the northern border as we've started securing the southern border. So it will continue to be a problem, but yeah, just come take a look at us, and it'll always be a problem. We always need to fight to protect our sovereign borders. We need to be a sovereign country. There's nothing wrong with that. And we need to have the best people come in here, people who want to work, people who want to be citizens, people who want to assimilate. And there's nothing wrong morally, legally, or otherwise for us to do that. So I appreciate you coming on and giving us an update. And as things change, or there's, big news or anything like that you want to talk about, hit us up again, because I'd love to keep in touch and have you on as things develop. Awesome. Well, I appreciate it, Bryce. Thank you so much for the time today.
Yeah, thank you. Well, to God be the glory, and we're out. Hey, thank you for watching or listening to this show. If you are someone who listens to us on the podcast apps, please go to our Rumble channel. Even if you're not going to watch us there, we'd appreciate you hitting subscribe. We want to boost those numbers up and make sure that channel continues to grow. But again, thank you so much for listening to us.